Jeff Dye's Friendship. Jeff Dye's Friendship. Jeff Dye's Friendship. Jeff Dye's Friendship. Jeff Dye has friends. No, really, Jeff has friends. Jeff's friends are on this podcast. Jeff Dye's Friendship. Jeff Dye's Friendship. Jeff Dye's Friendship. Jeff Dye's Friendship.
Friendship.
Welcome to Jeff Dye's Friendship Podcast, episode 68. And we got a doozy for you. Hey, by the way, thank you to all the new listeners from All Things Comedy since we got on their network. A lot of new followers, a lot of new listeners. We love you guys. We appreciate you guys. Some of you asked how you can watch these episodes. If you go to patreon.com/Jeff Dye and you subscribe to monthly, you get free comedy club tickets and you get to watch every episode of the Jeff Dye's Friendship Podcast. For older episodes of this, you can go to the YouTube /Jeff Dye's Friendship Podcast, and you can check out old episodes and watch those in their entirety. But if you want to watch them first and you want to watch them weekly, just subscribe over at Patreon. Other than that, if you're listening, we love you. We're happy to have you. iTunes, Spotify, wherever you get your iTunes, don't forget, or wherever you get your podcasts. Don't forget that if you love the podcast, subscribe, rate, and review. That helps a lot. This week we have Alex Edelman. Very, very, very funny comedian. Really cool guy. Really, he's just a unique little guy. You know, I don't know how to explain him any better than that. And I say little because he's like a little brother to me. When I was doing comedy in Seattle, I was 23, so 23 minus 6 is 17. He was a 17-year-old kid who wandered into Giggles Comedy Club, and he was so like bright-eyed and like into comedy. It was like a very he was like a bright light of like this little guy who loved stand-up, and he was doing stand-up. He's from Boston. He's very funny. The first time I ever met him, he was very cool, and I was happy to be his friend then. I'm still happy to be his friend, and I'm excited for you guys to get to meet my friend Alex Edelman. So enjoy the podcast. This is kind of an inside baseball comedy one, but there's also some good moments of just random stories. But I know you guys are going to love it. You're going to love him. Give him a follow. Go see his comedy shows. If he's still alive, he might be murdered by a rap star soon. We don't know. Love you, buddy. Enjoy it. Enjoy the pod. And just like that, we're in.
All right.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, thank you for tuning back into Jeff Dye's Friendship Podcast. As you said in the intro, they already know who he is. They already heard his credits. They already heard how I love him and know him. Alex Edelman, everyone.
Hey, buddy.
Big applause. We'll put a bunch in.
So happy to be here.
How are you doing, brother?
Good, man. I'm doing all right.
I was excited because I went down to Comedy Magic this weekend and I thought, all right, I'm going to find somebody I want to have on the podcast.
Dude, I love that club.
It's the best.
That club is so good.
What is that your favorite LA club? If you had to play the favorites game?
If I had to play the that's my favorite club in Hermosa Beach.
That sounds like something Daniel Tosh would say.
Yeah, it's my favorite club in Hermosa Beach proper.
Once Daniel Tosh was not doing so well with the audience. That's not true. He was killing, but they were old and not his demo.
I know what you mean, yeah.
Yeah, he was still killing by any stretch of the imagination. And then he just looked at him and goes, you know the only reason I play this club is because it's right by my house.
Yeah.
If they built another club in between my house and here, I'd play that club.
That's so funny.
Straight telling him how much he hates
He
them.
loves to surf, Tosh.
That's all he does.
That's why he lives down there.
Yeah,
huh?
he surfs every morning.
What's his address? No, I'm just kidding.
Well, somewhere by the club.
Yeah.
Somewhere by the
between
club.
here and the club. Huh?
Yeah. Wait. So it's not your favorite club in Los Angeles?
No, it is my favorite. It's my favorite club
Yeah.
in LA. You know why? The food. It's not the food itself, although the food is tremendous, but it creates a vibe where people want to sit in that green room and hang out and chat to each other, and everyone's real convivial, and comedians just...
The hell's convivial?
It's one of those 25-cent words. Friendly, and there's a friendly vibe, right, Tony?
Inviting.
That's a better word.
Inviting.
It's inviting, and you sit with like Larry Miller and Kathy Ladman were there this weekend. And I was like, between the two of you guys, you're both like, they're legends. They're comedy legends. Paul Reiser comes in there. Ray Romano comes in there.
It's a more friendly Comedy Cellar table. It means something to sit there, but it's a little less intimidating. Like the table at the Cellar, like I know people that won't sit at it. They're just
I won't sit there. I'm not passed.
Oh, really?
I've never auditioned.
Well, then you can't sit there.
I can't sit there.
There's a difference. But I know people that are passed who won't sit at that table because they're like, oh, I brought a friend and I don't want my friend to like be uncomfortable. You know, because
sure,
I'll straight be like, hey, just so you know, when we get there, I'm going to sit at that table and you guys can't. My friend's like, what? I was like, yeah, chill at the venue. Like, get a different table. I'm so excited to sit at that table.
Dude, it's one of my goals. But I've never auditioned there.
What are green rooms normally like at other clubs? If this one's so great.
Everyone's different, right?
Yeah. In fact, some of them, and I think they all have like a vibe or energy if you're into that kind of talk. Like some clubs, nobody even goes in the green room. It's just not a hang in there, you know?
Sure, that's definitely true. I try to watch comics when I'm on the road. When I'm headlining in Minneapolis or, you know, a place I've never been before.
Yeah.
I always try to watch the local openers. And
I like
see
that you do that.
Well, I mean, I want to see what they're doing in that club. I want to see what the standard has become in that city, in a B city that's not New York or LA.
Right.
I still try to watch the comics that I like. I saw Jeff, do 3 sets this weekend because we were at the.
I was appreciated that you watched it. It made me happy. But you know who could have benefited from this kind of idea? Neil Brennan. The other night, he was at the Improv.
Yeah.
And Neil Brennan's a genius.
He's a great comic.
One of the best. This is definitely not a trash talk. In fact, I emailed Neil yesterday about what I'm about to share.
Okay.
He goes on and he opens up with this Michael Jackson thing, and it's a hard left where he's like, where should we start? I guess we could start at Michael Jackson, and that's supposed to like be jolting for the crowd. However, he didn't watch that the comic right before me did 15 minutes of really edgy Michael Jackson molestation material.
Yeah.
So the audience had already heard about it. They
had heard a hard take on it.
And they heard a very edgy, like, I don't give a fuck kind of take.
Who was it, by the way?
Byron Bowers.
That's what I thought.
And it was funny.
Right.
The stuff he was doing was great. But if Neil would have watched the show, which he doesn't want to watch the show, and also he probably wasn't even in the building when Byron was on stage.
Also, Neil is one of the best comics and comedy writers, period. And so I think he very rightfully is like, why am I going to watch?
Yeah.
If I'm Mozart, why am I going to walk into a lounge and watch lounge piano players? Not that Byron is that, but
Yeah. But I think you're a genius comedian, and I like that you watch other comics. Do you know what I'm saying? I think there's something to learn from that.
But the funny thing is, I've never in my entire life ever stolen a joke. But I have sometimes seen comedians do a thing, and I go, I like that approach. I like that slow beat between your setup and the punchline. I like that you play that moment small when you could play it big. I like this, I like this angle on I have everything I know as a comedian is from watching comics that I admire and respect, or even comics that I don't admire and respect and go, I don't want to do that. I do want to do that. I don't want to be that kind of writer.
Yeah.
And sometimes, like, one of my favorite jokes is a joke about millennials buying houses. But for some reason in 2017, when I wrote the joke, there was a real strain of people in England writing that joke. I saw the joke 3 times in 4 months, or like a version of how impossible it would be for millennials to buy houses. And I love my joke, but I learned an important thing from watching other comedians, which is that a lot of other comedians are talking about this right now. My joke works, but it's not so head and shoulders above those jokes that I wouldn't get dinged for it. So I didn't put it in my hour that I was writing that year. And I still have the joke and pull it out from time to time, and I do love doing the joke. But I knew from what you need to know what the standard is. I think famous comedians have that problem. I think it's really hard to be a famous comedian in some ways because, sometimes you see these comics who shall go unnamed, but they're bigger comedians. They've been on, TV shows for a bunch of years, or they've done a lot of movies, and they walk into a comedy club and they get on stage and they do jokes that are sort of Like, jokes about Uber or jokes about like 10 years ago, jokes about Viagra because they don't know.
I saw a really famous guy, and I won't name names, but he did a bit about his GPS system and about how and like the voice of it and like how it reminded him of his wife and like just like he was like, I wish I could get a GPS system that was George Bush. Or I was just like, what?
Oh yeah, dude.
Like, that's like you're way too famous and great to be doing something this pedestrian.
This is exactly. Ironically, the joke about GPS being pedestrian.
Yeah. But don't you think so? Like Mozart should be watching some lounge, and going like, "Oh, we can learn from everything."
That's true. I mean, yeah, I guess 100%. Only so that you know that you're not doing stuff. It'll never be a concern for Neil because his stuff is weirdly. I know that Byron stuff, and it's really, 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 really good. And Neil's stuff is really, really different from that Byron stuff. But yeah, I worry, because I'm still, I'm about 10 years in, but I'm still developing in terms of how I am and in terms of what I'm good at. And so I feel like I have to watch everybody to make sure that we're not doing the same stuff.
I think we all should, is what I think. Mm-hmm. And also, like, not to mention, like, sometimes, like you just said, you'll learn things that aren't necessarily about that, but the performance aspect. Like,
totally.
There's a great quote, and I'm going to botch it, but Brian Regan said the reason when he started to kill is when he realized, I'm not just telling jokes, I'm performing jokes. Mm-hmm. This is a performance. The people are supposed to be enjoying the show, and I'm just sitting up there telling jokes. I should perform the jokes.
He's my favorite comedian from when I was younger, and still, how when you start, you love certain comedians, and then as you get older, most of them, you're like, I was 15.
Yeah, exactly.
Regan is
Mencil used to be one of my favorite comedians.
Sure, man.
When I first started, I was like, this guy's killing it.
Dude.
He's going hard after that McDonald's employee.
100%. I like that stuff. I liked the local guys that were doing the jokes when I started that I heard every Saturday for 5 years. Yeah. And I was back in Boston this past weekend headlining Last Boston. You've done that club.
Yeah, and that's where you started, right?
That's where I started. I started in Boston, and I went to a local club. I just dipped into the back for about 20 minutes. Just asked the door guy, I'm like, can I? And there was a guy on stage, and I was like, I remember this guy. I remember Steve. And he's up there, and he did, not kidding, 10 of the same minutes that I knew from when I was like 19.
Don't you think that's kind of a Boston thing?
Maybe.
That's a long pause.
I was thinking about it because I've never considered it before.
Because like a lot of those old dogs that everyone like calls like legends, because they are legendary, basically on time served and reputation and
time
funny.
Served and reputation. You make them sound like prison inmates.
That's the thing. Yeah. Is that like, well, why are we calling them legends? They haven't done any specials on TV that we admire. They haven't done any late nights that we admire. What we've done is we've said those guys are staples in a really good comedy community. Their names, they've worked all the worst gigs. They've worked all the best gigs. These guys are to be respected and revered.
They're a baseline. They have done this thing for a long time. Right. So
but maybe they're not getting late nights or 1 hour specials or these kind of things because they don't evolve the material.
Some of them had those though, and it didn't do anything for them. And they thought, why do I went to go see a great comedian once, a great Boston comic. I'll say his name is Steve Sweeney, and really funny guy. And he's on stage at this place called the Kowloon in Saugus, Massachusetts. And he's killing. And he drops in a new joke. It's a good joke. And I'm sitting next to this guy and his wife. This guy's got his arm around his wife. And he looks at her with genuine anger. He goes, I don't know this joke.
He's like mad at it, Brian.
And I was like, what?
Yeah.
Like, what world are we living in?
You should want the new jokes.
Well, he didn't want them. He wanted to hear the same Dunkin' Donuts material that he knew from Steve Sweeney 10 years ago. Yeah. And so he was pissed off. He looks at his eyes. I don't know this joke. It was a joke about Barack Obama or something like that. And I swear to God, just the look on his face
that is so
of funny. Surprise. He didn't want to be surprised. He was there to hear the greatest hits.
Yeah.
He was there to hear the accent of the woman at Dunkin' Donuts. I'm just guessing who's like, I'd like to order a large coffee. And
that's what he wanted.
That's what he wanted. That's what he's trying to show his date something. He's trying to do a thing. And Steve Sweeney's up there trying political material. And he's like, no.
I've been blindsided.
No, I work at the sand and gravel place, eating the sand and the gravel, and I don't want any new material. Here on my Saturday night, I've had the same lo mein every weekend for 35 years, and I want the same jokes I know.
Yeah.
And you're not going to
This piece of shit brought up Obama during my night out.
It's my night out. But so, part of me is like, well, maybe that's part of what they have to do.
If that, so I'll receive that as like that's your
but also,
stance
there are
on
no
it.
Seattle guys who are doing the same old things.
No, there is, and I can measure any comic that's not progressing the way we think they should, or they want to be progressing. That's the thing. The only thing keeping them back from what we expect of them or wish of them or hope of them and what they wish of themselves is not writing new material. That's what they're all like. They're all just stuck in this weird robotic 15.
But so I hear you when you say weird robotic 15, but I actually generate material very, very, very slowly. But I generate it
not
at a
as
pretty
slowly as
consistent
the same
pace.
15 minutes for 30 years.
Sure, I mean that's insane.
Jeez.
Because that's not even a life you'd enjoy.
Right, and that's what I think they're not enjoying it either, and that makes them jaded towards comedy. They go, it's all the same shit.
But
all these comics are doing the same thing. You're like, dude, it's okay. You can enjoy this. Like I love comedy, and the second I stop loving comedy is when I stop doing comedy.
I disagree. No, you won't.
I won't.
I think you'll be stuck in your ways. You're too smart for that. You'll change things. You'll do a different
I'll
thing.
never stop loving it. That's the thing. I'll always love it.
But imagine you're 30 years in.
Okay.
And you wanted to be somewhere else, and your best friend is Dennis Leary or, Bobcat Goldthwait or any of these guys who are famous or respected. Because even now, both of us have comics that we started with who are way ahead of us.
Of course.
Because that's the nature of comedy. And there are those comics they start with, they won't view themselves as the number one from their scene. They'll think, why can't I be this guy? And it'll be a weird circle. There's no one who thinks they're at the top of the mountain, except for maybe one person that we were talking about for the podcast.
Right.
And so imagine you're this guy, and it's just 30 years of jaded bitterness, and it's over. It's over for you. You've already achieved a comedy career where you have a body of work, where you're established, where you've done stuff. If God forbid you died tomorrow, your name as a comedian would still be resonant for a long time.
Yeah.
But imagine you're 75 and you don't have that, or you're 63 and you've been doing comedy since you were 18 years old.
Right.
And you're as funny as those other guys, but it just never happened. Or you did the Tonight Show, but it didn't change your life.
Right.
Well, you're gonna switch all of a sudden. You're gonna start writing novels or screenplays.
I think some people would find a way to justify it. I've did that for a while. Now I'm doing. How many people do you know that have done comedy since you've done it that have quit? I've known a bunch.
Oh, here's the thing. Probably a ton, but I can't think of one right now because they don't matter to me.
Exactly.
And I'm being honest. I'm saying a nice
true.
way to say it, but they're gone. There was that Seinfeld line that I saw that's, that you have on your wall downstairs, which is funny is the world I'm interested in.
Right.
If you're funny, I'm interested. If you're not funny, I'm not interested.
Yeah.
But the thing is, you know what I noticed? Every open mic comedian has one good joke. They've got one great joke. Just one. Someone should do a CD of open mic comedians.
But we've
and
talked
every
about
track.
It's a mixtape.
I don't know what somebody. We've had this take where it's I don't know if someone told me it or when it was back when I was at Giggles, where I first met you. Somebody said if I could just steal one joke from each open micer, I would be one of the best comedians in the world.
Well, your voice would be a little
all over
patchwork.
the place.
Yeah, it'd be a little all over the place. That joke about eating vagina.
Yeah, but you make it your own. You just you steal it.
I mean, maybe. I've never. There are rarely jokes where I think that joke would go perfect in my act. It doesn't really work.
Well, that's because you're good.
No, it's because I'm Jewish. But there's a
Wait
thing
a minute.
Yeah,
You're Jewish, Alex. knows more.
So funny.
If I had to like,
That
if there was
was
like
so funny.
a phone a friend of like Jewish history, Jewish culture, Jewish anything, you would be my phone a friend.
You said that the other night.
It's
and I couldn't
insane.
think anything. We're talking about Muhammad Ali, and I mentioned that Billy Crystal did a one-man show where he did Muhammad Ali for like, 45 minutes to an hour. And by the way, there's a video on YouTube of him doing the show in front of Muhammad Ali. And Muhammad Ali's like totally enwrapped. And everyone's like, oh, wow, cool. And Jeff is like, of course he knows like the Jewish history side.
We were only talking about Muhammad Ali for like 7 minutes, and he starts referencing Howard Cosell and Billy Crystal, and a long diatribe about it. Like, dude, we're for a second not talking about a Jewish thing, and then we brought it right back.
I can make anything into
It was
Jewish
amazing.
thing. But so every comedian, every open mic comic has one good joke, and I think that is just the worst because it gives them hope and it keeps them going. What was your first good joke?
That one gives me a good, the first joke I got laughs on was about how we're fine when animals kill people or kill each other.
Sure.
Because in their name, we know they're dangerous. So they'll say like, oh, that's a poisonous snake, But like when humans murder each other, like we punish, like, well, why don't people we just know which ones are which by labeling. So like, just, call it like Poisonous Jeff. He's going to kill you, And it was a stupid thing. It was like so Dane Cookish as far as like I was doing this big act out and this whole thing. And that's why I got laughs is because I was all over the place. And it was the first
joke.
Yeah.
How dare you?
What is your take on, how dare you? What is your take on Dane? You a Dane guy? You always been a Dane guy? Were you a Dane guy? Because you're a Boston guy.
I'm a Boston guy. I grew up idolizing Dane Cook. And, I've actually had a bunch of great... When I was 16, I took a bus down to New York overnight because I took the afternoon off high school. And I took the bus down to see Dane Cook do...
He talks about high school like it was a job. I took the afternoon off. Like it was a professional decision.
It was professional.
Actually, in hindsight, it was a professional decision because now you're a comedian. But it is like most people would be like, I skipped school.
I skipped school.
My mom and dad let me like leave early.
It was 2006 or 2007.
I took the afternoon off of my academics and I took a bus.
Dude, I went to a really tough school. My school ended at 6:15 p.m.
That's insane.
I went to a yeshiva, Jewish day school. The extra couple of hours were English or math or science and stuff, and the other shit was all Jewish shit. Like I studied a lot of Jewish
It's also
stuff.
how Boston people pick Mortal Kombat characters. Do you know that?
How's that?
Baraka, Yeshiva. They make you be Shiva, and
That's
they get the
amazing.
good one.
So I took the bus down to see Dane do, Vicious Circle?
Yeah.
And it was really cool. And it was a cool experience. And I've hung out with Dane a bunch. We spent a lot of time together in 2013 at the World Series. We went to the Boston.
Oh my
we went to
God.
the World Series after party together and stuff. And
Pretty cool.
And he's a good dude. I just honestly I don't see him anymore. I don't see him as much. I wish I would.
Okay. So you guys, wait, when did that bridge happen? You went from fan as a young man to like literally leaving school to watch it to then becoming his pal.
I was friends with a bunch of friends of his, and he was really tolerant, and I was coming up, and I started to get competent around 2012, 2013. And, and he had no way of knowing. I don't think he's ever maybe seen me once or twice at the Improv, but like, he was always pretty kind to me. But, Dane has had, since I've met him, he's been in the public conversation and vernacular. So his life is very different from any of ours.
Yeah.
Like even comedians who are, let's say, more famous than him, or you could argue are more famous because there's a comedian more famous than everybody.
Sure.
His life has been, and he's famous for doing stand-up. He came up because it wasn't stand-up.
Movies,
it wasn't movies. And so, when I started, I had a lot of respect for him. And still, there are things about him that are really, important to me.
Yeah.
So, and he's a Boston guy. He was the first Boston guy that connected with me as a young person instead of these old legends up there doing the same 15.
Right. So he was like my guy. When I first started, I was like,
we talked about it.
There was like nobody bigger. But I never got that we get to be friends or we get to hang out in the same circles. Like the people in Seattle that were like the biggest was like, actually like not to disrespect Seattle, but how bad that comedy scene is, and hear me out, is that I got to be the top of that circle within like a few years. Like that's how not good the circle is.
I like that circle. I don't know that. don't know. Oh, by the way, are there different circles? Is there the People's Republic of Comedy circle and the Comedy Club circle?
Yeah,
and the
those are two
Chop Suey?
separate circles. But even then, I was.
Were you doing proc?
No, they wouldn't have anything to do with me because I don't wear a hooded sweatshirt and have a beard, which is their thing. Like it's all like they book it based on like high school
I need to get me a hooded
identity
sweatshirt.
part.
Yeah, you need to get a
That's the
hoodie,
thing.
buddy.
You're wearing flannel. Just talk about how no one like just be depressing on stage.
That's why I like being a visitor because I never had because
Right.
I could duck into both scenes and people were like, "Yeah, he's fine, do it."
Well, like Nick Thune got famous. He's from Seattle, but he got famous in L.A. Adam Ray is from Seattle, but he got famous in Los
No one
Angeles.
gets famous in Seattle.
Well, not famous, but what you know of these people, Nick Thune started in LA. And Nick Thune in Seattle played guitar in like a Christian band and had like a tattoo from shoulder to shoulder that said like Yahweh. Like he was like a Christian guy and then went to LA, got like popular from TV and stuff, and then also stand up. And then Adam Ray went to USC, did his stand up in there. Joe Coy, Seattle guy, went to Vegas, got big in Vegas. Nobody was doing it in Seattle.
Sure.
So and those pro comic guys, what have they done? One of them quit comedy, still has a coffee shop named Kevin Hyder. Emmett Montgomery still is up there. Last time I saw him, he's just kind of a regular showcasey kind of comedy. He's not even really pursuing it much. I think he got married. He's got like diabetes now or something. Daniel Carroll went to...
He's a nice guy. I mean,
They're all nice. I'm friends with them. What I'm suggesting is it's such a not strong scene that like you can rise up very fast in it.
You know, Boston has had really tough times. The place I started, the Comedy Connection, closed down. And then the guy who owned it, started up comedy at the Wilbur Theater, and that's where national headliners come through now. But it's become a tough club place. Except for Laugh Boston, which is pretty good, pretty great. I try to say great and good. It's pretty good. It's pretty good. But there were like 7 or 8 fallow years where luckily I was not in town. But the strongest comedy shows.
But we didn't have a
Dane
Dane Cook. We couldn't go to the World Series with a Dane Cook. There was none of that for Seattle.
Well, we would run into each other. That's the thing. Dane and I never specifically hung. I couldn't call Dane right now, but I'd run into him and he knew me from his friends. But, Gary Goldman, who was a friend of Dane's in the Torreism
Huge
years,
Boston guy. This is another example.
But he got famous out of Boston.
They should call these other cities C cities. Boston's a B city.
Boston is a B city. That's fair.
These other cities should be like
Boston,
C cities.
Chicago are the B cities, and everywhere else is a C city.
That's what it should be.
Yeah, I believe that. New York and LA, A cities. Boston,
yeah.
Chicago, B cities. Everywhere else, a C city. There's nowhere else that really.
That's what it should be.
Yeah, and you should go CBA really, or DBA if you're really getting there. But Gary for me was the biggest influence. Gary Goldman put a lot of respect on that name in terms of, and he's starting to get it now. He's starting to get people recognizing, but he has been a slow, steady grind. Gary's in his late 40s, and he's a really one of the best comedians alive. He's
I think
absolutely incredible. And so he started there. And also, by the way, another guy was real patient with me. I wasn't funny yet when we started hanging out. And
nobody was funny in the beginning. But
no, but you don't hang out. How many open mic comedians do you hang out with? None.
Yeah.
I hang out with 2 or 3.
I used to be best friends with one.
Is he downstairs eating cereal right now?
He's down
Randy?
there. No, not Randy.
It's funny, dude. But I think there's a real I think there's a lot to be said though for these guys who everyone needs to be inducted up one level. People need to take someone in just slightly before they're ready and give them that last thing. That's happened to me twice or 3 times. When I started going over to England, I spent a lot of time in England.
Yeah, we got to talk about that.
Yeah, go ahead.
You've become the guy over there. Well,
guy.
Yeah, in my opinion, because I know nothing about Edinburgh. I know nothing about these things. In fact, the whole idea of it is when you first decide you want to be a comedian. Maybe you didn't go through this, but most people go through this thing where they're I want to be a comedian, but what does that look like? How do I even? It's this big question mark of do I write stuff down or do I show up to the place? Is there a sign up? You don't know any of that. That's how I feel about doing comedy in other countries. Dude, I have no clue. People, you should do Edinburgh. I was I don't even know what that looks like.
They are going through the same anxiety. Well, I will say this. Here's the best part of this. we're like, it's an American art form. They are the best comics in the world are American. It's not true.
Well, I've never thought that because I don't know anything about these other countries.
And why would you? I didn't know. I went over there to do my last semester of college in England, and I discovered, like 50 comedians who were like some of the best comedians I've ever heard with really unique approaches. Their comedy came from a different place than ours. Like our comedy came from vaudeville. Their comedy didn't come from vaudeville. It came from theater. It came from
us.
one person's kids, and then it came from us. And then it came from us. TV and the internet have changed everything for them. But before, the 80s or 90s, their comedy was pretty either theatrical or cabaret-ish, and people were more raconteurs than they were comedians, or if they were joke tellers, they told jokey jokes, street jokes and shit. But their comedy is so good. And by the way, I had that same curve with it in terms of not knowing anything. I remember thinking that there were 10 comedians in the world. And then I walked by this comedy club in Boston. I was 15 and I saw 6 names and I was like, oh, fuck, there are 16 comedians in the world. And then the next week I walked by and there was Mike Kaplan's name, who I'd seen the week before, but 4 others. And I was like, oh my God, there are 20 comedians in the world. How am I ever going to become a comedian with 20 comedians? Funny. Every week there are more. So I started music open mics because I was like, well, there are only 20 comedians. And Seinfeld is the one who would play Dick Doherty's Comedy Vault.
Yeah, naturally. He's going to be there every Friday.
Yeah, every Friday in the 60-person room.
That's the biggest. He's the top. That must be there.
That's what I thought. Yeah. But so England, so here's how I can best sum it up. Are you sure people aren't going to be bored by this?
Dude, are you crazy? They're going to love this.
All right.
You're also a historian of comedy. So this is perfect. This is on all things.
Do you want to hear about shit other than comedy? I'm worried that people are going to be like, there's more comedy from stupid
dude.
guy. Okay.
I'd be shocked if there's anyone who wasn't a fan of comedy listening to a comedy podcast.
Yeah.
We love you. We love you. Buy my album when it comes out. Okay. Their years, calendar-wise, revolve around August. Everywhere other than the United States, the world revolves around August because that's when the Edinburgh Fringe Festival happens. And at the Edinburgh Fringe Festival, and you're going to think I'm exaggerating, and I'm not, there are 3,200 shows a day.
Good night.
3,200 shows a day. There's comedy of every kind. There's theater. There's music. And every single room that can support comedy and a bunch that can't have comedy shows. So the basement of an Italian restaurant or or a church called the Tron gets converted into a thing. A college complex called the Pleasance supports 20 something venues. Jeez. And they do in each of those venues multiple shows a day, 8 shows a day. They start at noon, they end at 1 a.m. or 2 a.m. Each show is an hour.
But then how do you get anyone to come watch you?
Oh,
because it's just so spread out.
It's a bear fight. Some of the rooms are 1,000 seats, and some of them, I'm not kidding, are 7.
Right.
And so I have played to one person in Edinburgh. I played to no people where the guy was maybe people will see through the window and come in. Oh my God,
how embarrassing.
Yeah, it's awful.
Or not embarrassing, but just hard on the ego.
It's so hard on the ego. And that was 2013 or something. And so here's how you do it. There are 3 ways. One, there are reviews, because there's a small cottage industry of reviewers and the PR people that court them to come to your shows.
I was going to say, how do you get them to come?
You have to pay a PR person.
Oh, okay.
And these PR people are really, really, you can do your own PR, but that's not going to work.
Yeah.
You need someone who's been doing it for years. I have a really tough woman who's been doing it for a million years.
Jewish?
She does music. No, the most. Her name's Mel. And she's mate, look at it. She's really, really British, so British. She had Biggie Smalls as a client, and she's been doing it for that long. So she does music, comedy, theater, TV, whatever. And she will harass her and fight these reviewers until they come see your show.
I love that.
My show will get reviewed, 30 times in a 30-day festival.
That's great.
And so I really, really work hard to make sure that my show is airtight and that critics will like it, because if critics publish it, people will be like, oh, we should go see this thing, because everyone's looking to see what differentiates every show. So you need lots of good reviews. And also there are street teams. You pay a street team to hand out flyers with your face on it and bother people. And again, you can hand out your own flyers, but that is, if you thought performing to 0 people was crushing,
barking for your own thing,
everyone barks. You'll see people who are not kidding, legit famous people out there on the street bark. I saw David Hasselhoff doing it when he had his show out there.
That's insane.
But hey, come see my show. It's really, really. But here's the thing: for those 3,000 something shows a day, the population of the city goes from 1 million to 2 million in August. And the three top selling ticket events in the world are the Olympics, the World Cup, and the Edinburgh Fringe Festival.
Wow.
So
I remember feeling that just in Montreal of like, everyone's like, what shows are you on? I'm like, oh, and this one, and this one, and this one, and this one. I have 4 sets, which, you know, it's like, it's going to kind of be like New York where I'm running around. Oh, I just got off that. I can't even stay for the end of the show because I got to go over here.
Yeah, sure.
So there's that kind of stress.
Fun.
Yeah, it's exciting and I like it, but a lot of people might not know that there's a little bit of stress in comedy that way. Like you'll have 8 sets in New York and you're like, sometimes you'll go into a place like this, you'll go, let's say I'm at the Stand and I'm like, hey, can I actually go like next because I have to get back across the city to perform at the Cellar. And then they're like, ugh, okay. But then that means I'm not going to watch the other comedians. I'm not going to hang out and having beers because I've got all these spots to go to.
August 15th, 2015, I did 17 shows in a day.
That's insane.
And the first one was at noon. And the last one was at 3:30 a.m.
I wish you had a photo of you on stage at each place that night and put it like in an image.
But you want to know the funny thing is, it wasn't a goal.
I know.
It just happened.
It's pretty cool and it should be honored. I think that's huge.
It was fun, but you know, like that festival it creates comedians because here's the thing. Let's talk. I never talk about this because it's only of interest to comedians. But when you start doing comedy, stage time is such a struggle for you.
Yeah.
And you develop through stage time. So in Edinburgh, there are, you know, if you're doing your show every day for a month, you're doing at least 30 hours of comedy.
Yeah.
And, you know, there are we've been talking about A, B, C, and D cities. In a D city, it may literally take you 2.5 years to get 30 hours of comedy.
Exactly. And I talk about that all the time. People go, how long have you been doing this? I've said this on this a zillion times. People say, how long have you been doing comedy? And I say, 12 years. But those aren't a regular 12 years. We're measuring them by calendar, not stage time. Like when I was at Giggles, I was doing hours a week, like it felt like, because Terry didn't have any openers that were willing to work for those clubs. So I would get like 30 minutes when I had no business being on stage.
It's so important to get that. Like I got that in Edinburgh. And you know, I got that again and again. And by the way, Edinburgh sucks. It's the worst. It's so hard. I've been sick every year. It's grueling. And the third way to get it is awards. Well, by the way, to get people is awards. So I won an award there in 2014, but it created this pressure that was insane because you're already stressed. And then people start talking about, because there are only 2 awards that matter. And so people start talking about you for these awards, and out of the 3,000 people there, if you're being talked about as being in the top 10 for the nomination or 14 for the nomination, you're losing your mind because every show feels like the most important show of your life. And because people are seeing 8 shows a day, the audiences aren't the most lively in the world. Like they can be quiet.
Yeah, they're
be
like,
mean.
this is the guy. And you're like, now it's this expectation.
Dude, people talk about that a lot. If you get a 5-star review or something, or if you get mentioned as awards buzz, your show the next day is going to be sold out, but it's going to be sold out. People like, show me why.
Yeah.
Show me why you instead of the other comedians. And there'll be, not kidding, a good portion of that audience there is industry. So not
in
industry,
a way you went through what Dane Cook went through.
No. Dane's a whole other case, but I understand. I have a little bit of sympathy for Dane Cook because it's
those sort of moments though. It's like when people start saying you're the best, now they start going, what is it the best? And you're like, dude, I didn't change anything. I'm just doing my art.
I went with a comic I roomed last year with this guy who's one of the funniest guys I know, Ramon Reavis, really funny guy. He's from Cleveland, does everything himself, no agent, no manager, been on TV a lot. So funny. Just on the sheer tyranny of his comedy, he's made himself into, he shows up in Edinburgh. He's like, I'm going to do my own street team, my own PR. And I was like, doesn't work like that here. And so he didn't have a ton of people for his shows, his show is fantastic.
Was his idea the PR and his own street team, his own PR, was that because he was thinking like
he was going to do Edinburgh on a shoestring budget because Edinburgh is expensive.
It was money, yeah.
It was money, and also like it's worked for DIY has been Ramon's thing forever, and he picked up a ton of sets, made a ton of friends, got a bunch of work off of it. But his shows, we're not getting people.
Yeah.
And I will say that Ramon, and my show is in a 200-something seat venue every day, and for the most part, it was filled, and I got the best reviews I could possibly get. I got the best reviews at the festival. I got nominated for a couple of awards. I won one. And I have never been unhealthier or unhappier in my entire life because every day was grueling. I was sick all the time. I didn't get to hang out with any of my friends because I was so tired. And all my friends are there because there are like a million comedians there.
Yeah, you know all the foreign comedians. I ran into you in Montreal and your friends hated me. It was like, do you remember this? We talked about it briefly. I was at a coffee shop with Ursula.
Oh, yeah. Ursula Carlson?
Yeah, I love her.
She's the bomb. What are you talking about?
We were just having coffee together. Like literally, we went on like a little date together, and she's like this
awesome.
sweet, she's married, lesbian, great lady
from New Zealand.
But yeah, she was just like, we hit it off the night before, and then I was like, I wanted to get coffee. She wanted to get coffee, and I'm a snob about coffee, so we found this great little spot, and we literally were just enjoying our cup of coffee. We were there for like an hour laughing, and then she had to be somewhere, so she took it. And then you guys came in. He came in with like a bevy of comics from like all the different countries.
Comedians. Those guys don't love me either. I'll tell you that.
Oh, they don't.
Nah,
well, and then like I come over to say hi to you, and I think it's going to be this real like, hey, more comics.
I was like, hey.
Yeah, and you were super nice. I've never felt a colder energy towards me in the world. And I said some line that like triggered one of the comics too. I said something like, yeah, I've always liked like boy stuff, you know, because I grew up in a house full of girls. So I like boy things.
This Australian comedian was like, oh, boy stuff?
Yeah, and I was like, you know, like for some reason I have this weird complex in my brain that I gotta like whiskey and fishing and these kind of things because I grew up so girly that I want to do like boy stuff or like whatever a gender role would subscribe.
I can imagine a foreign comedian not being down for that.
Yeah, but it's just a sentence.
Yeah, but here's the thing. Here's one of the reasons I really like it there. People in the States talk about political correctness, and I'm like, people are like, it's crazy out there. And in the back of my mind, I'm like, the temperature of the water is just right for me. Like, I'm kind of cool with this. But like in England, it's really dialed up to 11, and it's kind of, I like it. I like the sort of, here's the thing about political correctness with heavy air quotes around it is that the problem is the aesthetic of political correctness in the United States you think of as not conducive to comedy, right?
Okay.
You know what I mean?
Some might think that, yeah.
But in England, in Australia, the aesthetic of political correctness is the same anger that you would associate with sort of like a Nick DiPaolo. So there will be Nick DiPaolos, but with progressive viewpoints.
Okay.
And so
it's very extreme.
Yeah, it's extreme. Sorry, it's a tangent, but you know, like, yeah, they get really, people, as soon as they hear something that doesn't sound politically correct in some of those places, they get their hackles up because of experience that has taught them that like there is real weird, like,
I don't mind being politically correct. I don't like the politically correct policing. Like if like, hey, we don't talk. You're like, whoa. I can say whatever the hell I want. And you can get mad at me for saying it. But like, so like, for example, like I'm doing a bit right now where like how I talk about I hated Shawn Michaels when I was a little kid, the pro wrestler. And why? Because I was homophobic when I was 8 years old.
I love this joke.
Like, you know what I'm saying? It's not, I'm not now. Now I'm an evolved adult, but I'm also not afraid to admit that when I saw Shawn Michaels come out, I was like, ew, someone killed this gay guy. Like, is he wearing pants and dancing around like I'm a sexy boy? Like, when is Undertaker gonna kill this guy? You know, like that's what. And
have you ever thought about, by the way, tag it with like, plus he's hot.
Yeah, and he's too hot. He's making me uncomfortable.
It's fucking sexy.
But some people hear that bit and they go, he's admitting to being homophobic and he's talking about killing a gay guy. You're like, no, there's context. Like I was a little kid and I didn't, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, we all have internalized homophobia and racism and sexism, and dealing with that is a big part of being an adult. Yeah.
Yeah.
Of course you were. And that's really important. Like,
I think if we're honest with ourselves, most little boys are pretty homophobic. Or so, you're like asexual. You don't even like girls. Like my mom and dad was like, do you have a girlfriend now? I'd be like, ew, I hate girls. You know?
Do you hear about this thing with Dina?
Mm-mm.
Who? So there's this comic, Dina Hashem, is really funny. And we were together in Melbourne. And don't let me forget, by the way, I talk about stuff that's not Edinburgh. But so Dina made this joke on the topical Comedy Central show this week at the Comedy Cellar about the rapper XX Tentacion.
Okay,
remember this guy?
No, I don't know the rapper.
He's a rapper who was 20 years old and he was killed. He was on his way to buy a car with $50,000 in cash, and someone shot him, took the money. And it's sad, but also like this guy was like a really violent dude who like repeatedly and like talked about beating his pregnant girlfriend, and he was
but that's hip hop. You're allowed to say all those things.
Yeah,
that's
but he was charged for it. He was going to jail and shit.
I wish the politically correct people would, be that brave when they're talking about rap, but they never are.
Yeah, but so Dina's joke was you guys still mourning ex-Ted and Tashio, and he was killed. He was carrying $50,000 in cash. He was on his way to buy a car, and someone killed him, and that's sad, but also made me think like, what a great commercial for Venmo. Like, gotta get Venmo. And it's a fucking solid joke, right? Pretty solid joke. So she immediately got a bazillion death threats.
Oh no.
And like had to shut down her Instagram, shut down her Twitter, issue 2 apologies. The bit's not going to air. And the rap community and the comedy community on Twitter have kind of been going to war. And I tweeted,
oh, that might be bad for my new bit.
What?
Dang it.
That's why you have your new bit about
I
Biggie
have a
and
whole
T-Rock?
bit about how like feminists will like get mad at like if it's like one sexist joke, though, like, you know, or if he even flirts with some sort of misogynistic undertone, or if it has some sort of sexist like angle, though they're so fast to like hold a comic to the fire. But I don't see any of these feminists lining up to protest hip hop artists. Like hip hop artists are allowed to say whatever they want. And why don't feminists do that? Because they're cowards. If they go talk to like rappers gonna be like, bitch, shut the fuck up, and they're gonna be like, all right, good argument, you know. But like if like they yell at me for a joke, I'm a coward. I'm gonna be like, all right, I'll change the jokes.
Yeah.
Here's my formal apology.
I know, but that's like, but Dina is like, here's the thing. If Anthony Jeselnik said it, no one give a fuck. But Dina's like, you know, Arab American and like, and a woman. And so people are like,
that should help her, actually.
You'd think
that
so.
That wouldn't work against her.
You'd think so, but it's a woman thing instead of a diversity thing. Like, people have really come for Dina. And by the way, I think the joke, like the rapper, is fairly well executed. Like, I'm pretty okay with I think he's a terrible guy. And so I tweeted like, Dina's a good person, this guy's a terrible guy. And like, if you're more offended by the comedian telling the joke about the violent abuser than the violent abuser, then maybe like, and I'm not kidding, I'm a little bit afraid because I've been getting a couple of death threats.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he had pretty intense fans.
Yeah,
and
you limped in onto a conversation.
It's so dumb. You know what? But like, by the way, if I'm like, this dude like sent me last night an Instagram snapshot of the show that I'm on tonight.
Oh,
he was just
God.
like, he's like, I'm gonna be seeing you. You better look over both shoulders, pussy boy. And like,
oh gosh,
yeah.
For the record, I hate the joke. Dina, hey, you shouldn't have said all that. You're wrong, shame on you, Dina.
No, comics have to stand up for the other.
Alex, I agree.
I know you agree, but you don't want to die. I get it.
I love life.
First of all,
Dina, shame on you.
If there are any XXX Tentacion Vince who also listen to the Jeff Dye Friendship
Love
podcast.
that guy. What's his name? XXX
Marashio? Oh my God.
Pistachio? Love that guy.
Yeah, XXX Pistachio.
He's a good guy. He's named after one of the Super Bowls.
But you know what's weird? How come there are no comedy fans who are like, this ride or die for comedians? Like, rap fans are crazy. Like, rap fans are like, send a photo, like, I'm gonna fucking kill you. But like, there are no comedy. That's like cool. Well, comedy fans, like, why can't you guys like be out there like
step it up,
making videos like ready to
our
kill
own street teams, and they don't even defend us.
Yes, our street teams just hand out flyers.
Our street teams are weak, bro.
But you know, it's amazing. Like, someone commented on my video, like a video of Mike Conan, LOL, Howard from Big Bang Theory, not funny at all. Like, I want my fans to be like, let's go fucking kill that guy.
Yeah, motherfucker. Defend your honor. Yeah,
defend my honor.
I agree.
You comment that underneath the video of the wrong rapper, your life is forfeit. Can I real quick say the other thing about the international comedy thing?
Yeah, I love that.
So Edinburgh's August. You do well in Edinburgh, it fans out from there. And Montreal is the third biggest comedy festival in the world, just for laughs. And it's, I think, the best, definitely the best one in North America. It's super cool. And it's a career milestone to go. You've done it a bunch of times. And this is the biggest festival in the Southern Hemisphere. And as far as I'm concerned, the best one on the planet is Melbourne Comedy Festival. It's like Edinburgh, but with two big differences. One, it's curated. So these two women, Rebecca and Susan, pick the festival lineup.
Nice.
Like they handpick, and you can also apply if you're an Australian act and do like homegrown stuff. And there's a really good homegrown scene, but Rebecca and Susan program this festival, and then they fly you out. They put you up in a hotel. Wow. They give you a per diem. So it's not like Edinburgh where you're just like
the
on
world's
your own.
largest club booking.
It really, it really is. It genuinely is. It's a fucking festival.
Yeah, it's
great.
great.
30 days also, and it's so much fun. And here's the thing, Melbourne, the food is fucking amazing, and the coffee is incredible. And I don't know shit about coffee, but I love this coffee. Like the whole thing is great.
So let's say that you said that your buddy that's really funny he had like a few people there. Not a lot of people turned out for his show.
No.
It was his first time. He learned the hard way. Maybe get a PR
That's
guy.
how I learned. Yeah.
And for you had 30 days where you were miserable, you were grumpy, you were feeling sick, all these different things. But you had like 200 people, pretty packed out.
250, 200. It was
so when you went home, and you don't have to say exact numbers, but you made money off of it. You went home with money.
Yeah, but you know what, dude? Like my first year, I went officially and sold out almost all my shows and. Did extra shows and won an award. I went home having broken even. And the next year I moved to a bigger venue and I came home with having broken even, with just stepped up a little bit in terms.
How's that possible?
Because this is maybe a shitty thing to say, but I don't care. The festival is kind of rigged against comedians, which is that everyone gets paid first before the comedians. So your PR gets paid first, then your producers get paid first, then the venue gets paid first, and they take a little more off the top, and then you have to rent the room that you're in.
It's crazy.
And then you have to rent an apartment, then you have to fly yourself out. And the whole thing is a really bad money-losing proposition. And to get to a point where you're making money, I made some money, but to get to that point, you have to do such an insane amount of investment.
Right.
And I did it because I was investing in myself in terms
and
of
the
doing
milestone of hey, I want to be seen in this level.
Sure.
But that's what clubs do in the beginning when you're an open micer. They're like, listen, you got to pick up the headliner from the airport, and you got to work the door on Thursdays, and you've got to do this. But in exchange, I'll give you stage time. And you're like, what?
that is a shitty deal.
That's worth it to you.
It is,
so
but you need it. But that's a shitty deal, though, right?
Yeah. It is a shitty deal. And that's what Edinburgh's doing to you guys, or me maybe potentially in the future, saying, listen, you're not going to make a ton of money, but we're letting you do our festival, and we're letting people sit, and you're like, this seems like a weird trade.
If you're famous, it's different. If you're famous, you'll make some money going over there, but it's not a lot. And every producer's thing is different, and there are some producers that are great, some producers that are not great, and and then also your shows can transfer to London, the Soho theaters.
Are you going back this year?
I am not, because I have a writing job that I wasn't able to prepare a new show for. And also, I don't do an hour a year. Those British comedians and Australian comics, they do an hour a year, and some of them are incredible. But by the way, the reason they get an hour a year together is because for the months of June and July, there's something called the preview system, which is audiences will go to their local pubs all over the country and see comedians work material out, with the eye towards getting ready for Edinburgh. And that's how big Edinburgh is, that people, just a random person on the street, knows that you're going to see someone get ready for Edinburgh. I've seen audience members get angry at a preview watching a guy because they thought his material was too polished. They want to see the work in progress. They want to see you. And they're called work in progress gigs or preview gigs. So you can do 40 hours of comedy before you do Edinburgh.
Which is the full circular. It's the complete opposite of Boston, when the guy's like, I don't know this joke.
Yeah. They're like, I know this joke. Fuck you.
Yeah, exactly.
I did this joke on TV.
Oh, that's so funny.
Yeah, I've seen people upset about that. I heard that bit on Live at the Apollo. Fuck you.
Oh, wow.
Really upset.
Because in my mind, I would think I'm going to do the greatest hits of all the stuff I've ever written, because I want them to be introduced to Jeff for the first time.
Sure.
Yeah.
They don't, and you can do that your first year, which is why the first year is really important for comedians going to Edinburgh. But I did a show in 2014, then I had to get a show ready for 2015. So I moved to England for 2 months before the festival to get ready and do it in preview. And it was a good show. It was better than I've done 3 hours, but I took a break from 2015 through 2018. I was doing various writing jobs, so I couldn't
Is that what you'd rather do?
Edinburgh?
Well, not rather.
Hour-long shows?
No, but I'm saying like you live in LA now because you're writing on TV shows and doing things like that. Is that something that because I've never wanted to go down the writing path.
I like a mix.
Okay.
I like also, I don't know yet. I'm 30, which feels like an age where you should know shit. But, I own an apartment in New York with my brothers. And so I go to New York. New York is where I go to sort of rest and be quiet. And sometimes after Edinburgh 2014, I went to this apartment in New York that AJ and Austin and my brothers had just bought, small apartment. And I sat there for 2 weeks, and I think there was a 9-day stretch where I didn't speak to anyone. Just no one. Where I just sat and thought. And so writers' rooms.
I've had 9-day stretches in New York where no one spoke to me. Where there's, what is that?
That is how it works. I mean, like, that is I'm a really weird dude. I know it sounds like everyone's weird, but like, I like being in a writer's room, but then when I'm in a writer's room, I go, oh, I want to be out on the road. And when I'm out on the road, I go, oh, I like to be sat. I've got a couple of, I love doing hours though. Like you say, like nothing connects you with an audience. Like 46, 47 minutes into a show, when you do your 30 seconds that isn't a joke, where you just say a thing and the audience is like listening. My favorite comics, you have this, a bunch of comics I don't like have this, which is where they're quiet and the audience is totally enraptured. So like, that's my favorite thing about comedy. And so you mostly only get that doing live stuff. So I will always be a live comic, but there are other creative juices. So I like to write for TV. Also, the money's way better. And that's
my favorite thing about comedy. One of my favorite things about comedy is that to be a comedian, you have to be such a different breed. You have to be such a different person to say, like, I want to get up there and share my thoughts and try to get people's approval and get them to laugh at me. But however, to be that different, the only way they're going to identify with you, a room full of strangers who would never do this sort of thing, is if they somehow connect with you or identify. So you're so different, yet you're saying, how can I bridge this gap and connect with people who are not like me at all?
What would you be doing, though, you think, if you weren't a comic?
I don't think there's anything there's things I would like to do if I wasn't a comic that is just not in me. I'd let you think pro athlete or like those, but there's never a day in my life that was ever an option.
I mean, I hear that, but like, when you
wait
did
tables,
Better Late Than Never.
Yeah.
Like, you're really, I was watching him like, Jeff would be a good, like sort of documentarian. Like you'd be a decent guy out there because there's an aspect of comedy that you're curious about stuff. So, seeing you, in Asia, I was like, oh, I can see Jeff doing this and maybe still being funny without having to necessarily be a stand-up.
I've never. It's an uncomfortable question for me because I don't want to be anything but a comic. Like my whole life, I was like, I'm going to be the silly guy. I'm going to be the funny guy. I'm going to be the goofball. There was never a consideration of anything else. Even the idea of college makes me so uneasy.
Really? You didn't do college?
No, and I don't know how I would. It would be such a confusing navigation. Like, where do I go from here? I have nightmares about going to class. Like I've had a nightmare just the other night about like, fuck, I have to get credits and like I'm like walking to this class like, all right, Jeff, you'll take it one day at a time. Like just the idea of like,
I'm for a comedian, I'm weirdly earnest. So I really like stuff that's very serious and
structured.
Well, not just structure, but I like stuff that has like, that feels important. So I like stuff that feels important that you can do in a funny way.
Okay.
So like, I love, like my comedy is usually about like sad shit. So like I love doing stuff about stuff. Like I like a blend of things. I was never quite the goofy guy, but I was always sort of like the goofy sad guy or the sad goofy guy.
Okay.
So like those two things kind of work for me. I don't know. I'm just talking.
No, I'm curious about that. You said you weren't the goofy guy.
No, I wasn't the goofy guy, but I was the guy who, if we were at a funeral, would be the person who leans over and whispers a joke.
Okay. Yeah, you're the Andrew Slater. So I've got different guys in my life so like Andrew, if you would never know he's the class clown, but he's definitely like the funniest guy in the room and he's really smart. Whereas I'm the dumb guy who everyone gets credit for being the funniest guy in the room because I am funny, but I'm the one who's like, and the teacher's like, hey, who did that? And then all the kids are like, Jeff's a legend. It's like that kind of growing up. That was,
So I'm the guy who would do But I would only do that at like the Holocaust Memorial because like it's not funny to me otherwise.
Yeah.
Like I think things that don't. I love comedy where there's incongruity.
Okay.
I love comedy where things don't. So the hour that I did in Edinburgh last year was I went to a meeting of Nazis in Long Island City.
Yeah, this is great. We talked about this off the podcast when in Hermosa the other night going to a bar. But
and
tell this to the people. It's so fascinating.
So I went to this meeting of Nazis in New York because they were tweeting mean shit at me.
Wait, why?
So I released this radio show. I have a radio show in it. It's about the interior lives of young people. I know you're laughing already. And I got a couple of anti-Semitic tweets. So I responded to them, which is a huge mistake. So then I just got an avalanche of more anti-Semitic tweets. And so I started adding these people to a Twitter list because you can make lists on Twitter. Yeah. So the name of my Twitter list for the anti-Semites was Jewish National Fund Contributors. And so I get a lot of tweets like, take me off your list. I've never contributed to the Jewish National Fund. And I was always like, there's still time, bro. Like,
yeah, you can change.
We're the pledge drivers, we're like in the middle of a thing. And so one of these guys, I'm looking through this list, and one of the guys tweeted, if you're not ashamed of your hashtag whiteness, come to 441 East 27th Avenue, and not Street, Avenue, which is in Queens. And so it was tomorrow at 9 p.m. So I went. I
know, but what happens to you? Like, what's going on internally when you're walking to a meeting of Nazis in Queens at 9 p.m.?
Honestly, it was January of 20. It was the winter of 20.
Also, those kind of tweets aren't real invitations, right?
Well, I didn't know. It was an open tweet. He only had 48 followers, and
all right. So you go, and you're not afraid or anything.
I wasn't afraid. I was in a sort of sad place. I have my quiet months where I just sit and think. Okay. And I was in that mode, and that's usually when stuff happens. By the way, I'm good at like walking around the world and letting things happen to me, and so I walk in, and I was real quiet, and then I didn't want to be quiet. Then I want to talk. So I talked a little bit, mostly like technical information as opposed to like ideological stuff.
So you knocked on the door.
Well, the door was open. Well, there was a sign that said third floor. And I go up to the third floor, and there's an open hallway. And I walk in, and I start talking to a girl there, a cute girl. And that's how dumb I am.
I'm one of the Jews you hate.
No, I had to keep that real quiet. That was the only thing where I was like, well, I'm not going to lie to anyone, but I'm also not going to be like, hello, nice to meet you.
Yeah. Oh, the temperature.
Do you know if these muffins are kosher? But so I sat there for a couple of hours, and then one of the guys was like, hey, you're a Jew. And I was like, I am. And then they were like, actually I'm doing an hour-long show about it. So if anyone wants to come, great. I'm doing the show in New York on August 15th. And it's been good, but people seem to be genuinely engaging with it because it's sort of topical.
Most people don't do that kind of stuff. And that's what makes it so great.
I'm not most people.
That's what makes you great. That's the different part that puts you on the stage, is that you're willing to do those kind of experiences. And if you get a bit out of it, that's great. But more of like a life thing. Like, like you, for the rest of your life, you'd be like, I went to a meeting full of Nazis once, and they'd be like, what?
Yeah.
Tell us everything.
But you were just talking before the podcast about like being upset about something and rolling up a t-shirt. Like,
making the best of it, yeah.
Yeah. You made something. Jeff was telling a story. I'm going to retell Jeff's story. He was upset about something on a shoot, and they were just like, all right, well, you'll fucking deal with it. And he rolled up a t-shirt and he put it in his pants leg so it looks like a massive donger. Yeah. So when they were filming the scene and blocking the scene, Jeff on camera looked like he had a massive peen.
Right.
So,
and it made me so happy that I was willing to get through
it. It's really funny. It's really, really funny. And that's something that and like a muggle would be. I hate when people say that about non-comedians, but like if someone who's not a comedy person who doesn't get it, would be like, you do that for the joke? You'd be like, no, I do that because that's the way I am. Yeah. And the joking is the second part.
Right. Yeah. I needed it for my own pleasure. Like we comedians, at least I don't know if I should speak for all comedians, but a lot of comedians and people like us, like, we need something for us. You know what I'm saying? Like something like that. Like if I'm not enjoying this thing, why am I doing it? Which is similar to the Jerry Seinfeld thing.
Sure.
Like, I don't know I've never been in a place that I didn't want to be at.
Besides Seinfeld, if you can meet any one comedian and spend some time with them, who'd it be?
Well, Jerry's my number one for sure.
Yeah, sure.
Spend time with, like go get food with. And
go get food. You meet him as a peer.
Doug Stanhope.
Mine is Steve Martin.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
But I don't think he actually has sad moments too.
Yeah, which is why I like him.
Okay.
That's what I think Steve Martin for me is weirdly the most resonant, besides Mel Brooks. Mel Brooks is like you. He's like the goofy,
playful,
funny guy.
silly.
You know, I know him a little bit.
Oh, really?
Just from a mutual friend. And like he was in London. I brought my buddy Cord to see him screen Blazing Saddles. And Mel is one of these guys who like has an opinion that I don't necessarily agree with, which is that political correctness is ruining comedy. And he's like, Blazing Saddles, you know, basically this sort of like could never make Blazing Saddles today. And so we're backstage after the screening, me and my buddy Cord, who's a black writer who writes on The Good Place. Really, really, really funny guy. And Cord says, I saw Richard Pryor credited as one of the writers of Blazing Saddles. And Mel Brooks, like 30 seconds after his political correctness diatribe, was like, well, yeah, I mean, like, they brought me the script and I was like, well, I don't know what it's like to be black in America. And so like Richie knew everything about what it's like to be black in America. And he was at the Village Vanguard all the time. So I knew him a little bit. And I was like, Richie, will you help me write this screenplay about being black? And he had a bunch of great Richard Pryor stories about how he brought Richard Pryor on because Richard Pryor was black and he wasn't, and knew a lot about the black experience and was funny in a way that was appropriate. And like at the end, I was like, Mel, that's representation.
Right.
And he's like, what? And I was like, that's very woke of you to hire Richard Pryor. He's like, woke? And I was like, yeah, it was super woke of you to hire Richard Pryor. And he's like, and whenever he doesn't agree with you but doesn't want to articulate an argument, he'll tap you on the cheek. So he just reaches up. He's like, oh, no, you don't understand. I have a good, see, like, and dismisses you to meet the next person.
That's like Terry Bradshaw, whenever we're like verbally being playful and like going back and forth and maybe like teasing each other, if he can't come up with a comeback, you'll see it happen sometimes where he can't like verbally spar or something. Like when he's kind of at that end, he'll just go, will you shut up? He just hits me with a shut up or a smack on the, you know.
What's Henry? I got to know what Henry Winkler is like.
He's the
that
best.
dude is
very talented, super nice. All right, last question.
Oh, sure. Sorry. This is
I don't want to talk about Henry Winkler. I love him, but this is about Alex Edelman. I want the people to get to know Alex Edelman.
They've tuned out
actually, before the last question, where can people buy your stuff? Where can they find you?
You can find me on Twitter. My name is Alex Edelman. That's just my name. On Instagram, it's Alex Edelman, but with the word "the" before it. I've got a website. I've got a couple of weird upcoming things. I'm doing that show about the Nazis in New York on August 15th. And on August 8th through 12th, I will be part of Bell and Sebastian's Bodie Weekender Floating Music Festival, which goes from Barcelona to Sardinia and back.
That sounds amazing.
Yeah, so they're selling tickets for that. So if anyone wants to go, they have some packages and it's cool. It's like me and Mogwai and Camera Obscura and Yola Tango.
So this is another thing. Like you do all the things I wouldn't even know how to book. Like in Edinburgh, I wouldn't know how that goes or how these like foreign shows in other countries. But then also you open for a lot of musicians.
Yeah, I've been for Beck for a while.
Yeah,
it was cool.
Well, I love Beck.
I've been for Ryan Adams, who's a fucking monster. I probably shouldn't say it. Actually, no, everybody knows now. He's a bad dude. Yeah, he's bad. But like
you opened for him for the longest, I think, right?
I opened for Beck for a little bit longer, but I really, really disliked Ryan Adams, which sucks because Ryan Adams is actually more my kind of musical taste than Beck.
Oh, really?
But
I love Beck.
Beck is so fucking cool. And he performs. Like he does Loser every night like it's the first time he's doing it.
To this day, that's the best concert I've ever been to. Was
really?
Beck. Yeah, as far as like a show. Like it was just like and also maybe because I didn't know any of Beck's music when I went to that concert. So it was like my first time getting introduced to Beck. And sometimes I'll hear like my iPod or my phone or whatever is like on shuffle and a Beck song comes on and they're like, cheers, my. I'm like, yes, it reminds me of that concert.
By the low-key great karaoke song because you can do the verses and then people can do the I'm a loser, baby.
Yeah,
so okay. I don't drink you. But like he's the man. He's super cool, and audiences are pretty chill about like a comedian opening for a musician. I find.
Do you keep it clean, or do you have to like you just did whatever?
I keep it. I say fuck occasionally, but you know, like I keep it clean. I'm talking about eating vaginas.
Right. Yeah, you wouldn't.
I'm talking about munching
what could a Beck fan identify with that about?
The sick burn.
Yeah.
Oh, this guy's talking about munching vaginas. I don't like it one
bit. What is that? Dude, play loser. I'm a loser, baby.
Although, yeah, go ahead.
Last question.
Yeah.
What happens when we die?
So there's this book called Some, and it's 42 different conceptions of the afterlife. It's really, really great. It's by this guy named David Edelman, who's a professor at Baylor. And I read through the book and I finished it, and I was like, none of these conceptions work for me, which is crazy. 42 options, and I was like, nope.
Yeah. You're like some people with gender. You're like, I don't know, not this one either. I don't like that one.
I think when we die, I think something happens. I don't think it's any sort of heaven or hell situation, but like the odds of us having consciousness here now seems so low, and it seems like so much work to get us here. So I feel like the fact that we are here against all odds means that there's probably something else afterwards where, all odds. But I also don't believe that our brains can conceive it or articulate it. So I believe that something happens. I believe that there's a conscious experience. I don't know if you retain any memory of what happens here on Earth. I don't think there's a merit system, sadly. I think we're like animals to whatever put us here. But yeah, I do believe that something happens after we die. I don't believe that there's not nothing. And I don't believe when people are like, your energy is scattered. I'm like, that's a weirdly vague and non-specific and LA way of just being like, nothing happens. But
in LA way.
But you also do live on in the memory of the people who knew you, which I think is really nice and really important, and why it's important to do comedy. And so if I'm being totally honest with you, I am comfortable sitting in a writer's room my entire life, but I'm not here to do that. I'm here to dent cars. Like, I'm here to make things happen and to make work that connects with people and to be face forward about it, and to, when I die, have a body of work that exists without me. So that's why I do hours, and that's why I'm really serious about comedy. It's not just this goofy, ephemeral thing. It's like a really serious calling. So
I love that answer. Yeah. And I feel like, not to backtrack, but when I was talking about writers and being in a writer's room, I couldn't imagine being in a room where I have to give my work to someone else to get credit for. So that's the problem for me. I want them to, I don't want people to go, you know what? Conan O'Brien's my favorite. He's very funny, and then they die. They have no idea who Brian Kiley is or Laurie Kilmartin.
But those guys are geniuses.
So, but that's the thing. I am not as generous as those comedians in the fashion that I want them to know Jeff did this. Sure. So that's how I'm making a dent. But dude, thank you so much for being on. I love you, buddy.
Sorry to talk so much about just average comedy show.
We love it, man. That's what we want. We want people to know you.
Talk sports.
Let's do it. Tony, got anything to promote, bud?
Nope. Just the fact that I was actually here on this episode.
Yeah, fuck, dude. I'm sorry.
I just, I didn't have much.
I was like, God, I'm talking over Tony.
No, I just didn't have much to contribute. I was just absorbing the
comedy.
I love the world that you guys are in, and so I was just like absorbing. But no, just follow me on Instagram and Twitter, and you can see what I'm up to there at I am Tony Reavis. I got stuff all the time.
T-Dog, old T-Bone.
Yeah.
I recommend going to see Jeff die. What Wednesday is it? Wednesday the 19th of August? Or no? Wednesday, maybe.
Oh, at the Comedy and Magic Club?
Comedy Magic,
Yeah. I'm not sure. I should definitely know that.
It's a really good club.
Thank you. Yeah, I love that place. It's really fun,
but they won't experience the food part, maybe. Well, they will. They can order.
There's good food there.
Yeah. It's the only good comedy club food in the world, except
I know. I think the owner, Mike Lacey, has just given up on comedy. He's just like, I'll do the menu part. Let Richard do the comedy. Because there's Richard Barrett manages the place and runs it.
It's a great place.
And Richard does all that. And then the owner, Mike's like, I'll deal with the wine. And it's like we play jazz in the side room sometimes.
Do they really?
Yeah, that's what he likes.
Can I ask real quick, what do you think? Fine.
What do I think?
What do you think happens after we die?
I've wrestled this my whole life because I've been indoctrinated with Christian theology, and I believe that. I think that I don't know. That's why I ask every guest.
Do you ask every guest?
Yeah.
Who's giving the best answer?
I liked your answer.
It got very Keanu Reeves there at the end, which is what sparked. So that's what sparked this whole thing. I saw a video of Stephen Colbert asking Keanu Reeves, he's like, "What happens when we die?" And he's like, "I don't know what happens when we die. I do know that you have people that love you will miss you."
Oh, yeah.
Which I don't think that answer is very wise. Tony does.
I don't like Keanu Reeves.
You don't?
Everyone's all into this Keanu Reeves stage. I don't like the hero. He's just a guy who plays pretend. He's no better or worse than everybody else. My friend
I
was
don't
like,
think people are saying that he is.
yeah, everyone, no, he's the internet's boyfriend.
Because he's a nice guy. He does nice things.
And also, what you did just say does suggest that people think he's like larger than life.
Yeah,
because his answer was. Wait, say that the last part that you said about
when
Keanu Reeves' answer.
People who love you will miss you.
Yeah, but that's such a basic answer to me.
Yeah.
That people who love you will miss. Of course.
Sure.
I believe that I'm trying to articulate this.
I think he's just the nice guy.
Yeah.
And that goes a long way because especially in Hollywood. That's what when I was in theater school, that's what I learned. Like people, they're like, he keeps getting work because he's the nicest person in.
Everyone should be nice. It's a baseline, but you don't need to be Jesus now. Everyone's like, someone was like, Keanu Reeves showed up at my friend's wedding and sat at the singles table. Isn't that great? I'm like, yeah, not if you or anyone else at the singles table. If you're another single guy, you're a computer programmer, you wash your hair, you wear a suit, you're like, might get late tonight. And Keanu Reeves sits next to you. You're like,
yeah, exactly.
Oh, well, I guess fuck me then.
Perfect.
Yeah. All right. Okay. Sorry to
what's funny is I don't even really. I have no answer. I don't know.
You'll figure it out one day.
Pick someone's.
I used to think like that like there's a heaven and a hell and all that. I think that we're separated like as far as like good and bad, or else what are we doing? Why be good if it doesn't even matter?
Because it does matter.
It does matter.
It does matter in terms of making this a pleasant experience for everyone.
Yeah.
You're on a plane. You don't need to. No one needs to be like, hey, when you get off the plane, there's a better section of people who aren't monsters. We're on the same plane.
That's my big thing with heaven. Like, okay, great. If that's what makes you be a good person, because you're worried about what happens after, but you should be a good person.
Yeah,
because if you're here, and you should be a good person while we're all together.
So,
yeah, like the motive is strange.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm doing it so I go to that good place. Why don't you just do it because you shouldn't?
Yeah.
Like do it because you should.
The story of the egg.
We're also programmed that way to just kind of be like, okay. I think we're programmed at like a baseline. If something bad happens to you, that's why.
See, I think I figured out this world, but I don't know anything that happens after, and I don't have any opinions about that. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Like 100%. I know how to live here.
Yeah.
Like as far as like I was really subscribed to like Taoist philosophies. Like in the Tao it says the sage is kind to who is kind.
Yeah.
And the sage is kind to who is unkind, because at his root he is kindness. So
sure.
I'm not just nice to people who are nice to me.
But
I'm not just nice to people who've earned it.
But I mostly hang out with nice people. Don't you mostly hang out with nice people?
Yeah, but I don't have any hard feelings towards people that aren't politically correct or Republicans or racists, or I don't hate Nazis.
Sure.
I think they should be changed. I think they should change their ideologies.
It's hard to hate up close, by the way. That's what I learned from going to that thing. I don't talk about this in the show because I only have a limited amount of time, but like it's hard to hate Nazis up close. All you do is see them and you feel bad for them.
Yeah.
Because they're so driven by fear and driven by hate. You're just like, man, what a shame. If I could just get in your head for a second and be like, just, like things are pretty good for you. Just like chill out. Like literally chill out. No one's here to kill you or replace you. Just like, don't be so strident. Just like enough already.
Right.
But like, yeah, it's hard to.
And same vice versa. It was hard for them to be as visceral as they are towards Jews because you were right there.
100%.
And there's a documentary about Nazis that this woman made, and she's like Muslim and she's female, and she's an American, I think too. And she's doing this documentary, and the Nazis are like borderline flirting with her.
Sure.
They're like, because it's like a one-on-one. She's taking an interest in them. She's coming into their house.
Sure,
she's like,
just doesn't happen.
And they're like, and so she's like, she'll remind them sometimes, like, I'm a female and Muslim and whatever. And they're like, oh, well, like, there's some good. And you're like, totally. They couldn't even stick to their guns.
But that's like,
because it's hard to hate up close. And I actually love that line.
Again, another thing I didn't really get into. I didn't get into in the show, but there was this guy named Whit at this meeting. And we were like, I hit it off with a couple people there, and I could tell when he found out that there are people when they found out that I was Jewish were more upset than the other ones. But this Whit guy looking at me like, you're Jewish. I think it confused him a little bit because I think like there are people who were upset, but I think he was like, but like you're like kind of cool.
Right. They've been taught that you're like
not cool.
Right. They've been taught that you're this and you're that and you're these things. And so now you've challenged their learning. Because if they never have to meet any Jews, then they can just think they're all awful and crazy. So when you have to meet somebody of that, now it challenges your
I wish I could go back and be like, am I the first Jew you've ever met? Because I really would have loved to have been like, if I'm the first Jew you've ever met, like, just get out there. Like, there are a bunch of us.
Probably the first Jew that he lives, if they're in Queens, like, you're the first Jew he knows he met.
By the way, most diverse borough in the world.
Right,
literally every country in the United Nations is represented in Queens. So, like, what fucking...
That's very strange.
Yeah. All right, dude, this is... Come to my show, Union Hall, New York, August 15th. Bye-bye.
There you go. You're the best. That's the best ending we've had.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening, guys.
Friendship.
How about that? Another great episode. Episode 68 in the books. To all our new listeners and all our old listeners, we love you guys. Thank you so much. Don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review. And we'll see you next week, episode 69, where we welcome in Los Angeles Lakers owner Jeannie Buss. Yes, the Bus is in the house, talking all things lady wrestling, all things stand-up, and maybe we'll talk Lakers. I mean, I'm definitely going to bring up LeBron James because he's my spirit animal. Love you guys. See you next week.